Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Big Blue Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Volz, a sophomore here at SUNY Fredonia. Well, it was an eventful weekend of sports. Of course, we got a lot to get to and a lot to unpack here with Fredonia sports, with the NFL's Week 1 this past weekend. I have a lot to say about the Bills-Jets Monday night game this past week, as well as their next week's Sunday afternoon 1 o'clock game against the Las Vegas Raiders in Orchard Park, the Bills' home opener. And then just a general preview of, well, actually, I'll talk about what's going on in the baseball season because I think that it's important to touch on that. We're getting closer to playoffs, and then I'll also make sure that we talk about who I think is going to win all the games in Week 2, and then watch me be hilariously wrong on Sunday. But first of all, the Fredonia State sports teams, some of them actually are off to a fantastic start. For example, the men's soccer team. The Blue Devil Classic, of course, was this past weekend. And the men's soccer team, after 5 games this year, still has yet to suffer their first loss. They come in with a record of 2-0-3. They've actually had 2 scoreless ties this year. Like, this is the crazy thing about this team, is that they've had 2 scoreless ties. Okay. And then they had a 5-5 tie against Houghton in the Blue Devil Classic. And their 2 wins, they beat Chatham 7-1 last week, and they beat St. Vincent 7-2 last night. That Blue Devils team can put the ball in the back of the net. I mean, I was on the play-by-play on the live stream for last night's game against St. Vincent, and Fredonia scored their first goal 51 seconds into the game. You know, it was... They had gotten the ball, and I think that if my memory serves me correctly, but it's been 24 hours, so forgive me. But there was a shot on net on the other end that Thomas McDonald for the Blue Devils made the save, and then Fredonia got the ball down to the other end of the field, and Chance LaCroix for Fredonia just he was able to get by the defender, get by him. And then a beautiful crossing pass, and Brian Taylor was right there for the finish. Brian Taylor actually scored 2 goals in last night's game. And actually, I should mention, because I've mentioned this before, Chance LaCroix was actually a teammate of mine on youth soccer. We went to school together. But yeah, so it was a thrilling game last night. Not necessarily for St. Vincent, I would say, but yeah, Fredonia was up 5-1 at the end of the first half, and it seemed like the Blue Devils were very much in control this entire game. I mean, like I said, a 7-2 final. It is not common to score 7 goals in a soccer game. I mean, that's approaching lacrosse territory for high scoring. That's you don't even see hockey games or baseball games where teams score 7. And the Blue Devils soccer team has done it twice. That's the crazy part, is that they've scored 7 goals twice. They scored 5 goals once, and they've been shut out twice. But both times they were shut out, they also shut out their opponent. It was a scoreless tie twice. So this team we know they can put the ball in the back of the net. I think the biggest thing for them is going to be maybe a little bit of improvement on defense. Giving up 5 to Houghton was not great. Actually, one of St. Vincent's goals last night was just off bad luck. It was a long shot from behind the box that Huddy Kwiatkowski tried to step in front of it, but when he stepped in front of it, the ball kind of took a weird bounce off his foot and then rolled into the opposite corner of the net. There was nothing Thomas McDonald could do, or I think Kyle Pizzullo might have actually been in at that point. I think Kyle Pizzullo was in at that point, but there was just nothing he could do. And I should mention, I also went to school with Huddy Kwiatkowski. We played youth soccer together. He was a lot better than I was, obviously. That's why I'm here and he's out there. So next, the Blue Devils are back in action. They actually have 2 games this weekend. This Friday night at 7 o'clock, hosting Pitt Bradford, and then they'll be on the road heading up to Hamburg on Saturday for a 1 o'clock tilt with Hilbert. The women's soccer team also incredibly successful in the Blue Devil Classic and played a great game last night. They were at home against Alfred last night. It was a 1-1 tie. Talia Defay tied the game. I think it was with 13 minutes left or something like that. The Blue Devils outshot Alfred 15-3 in this game. I mean, they dominated. They controlled the pace very much. And when I talk about soccer, when I talk about controlling the pace or ball possession like that, I'm kind of basing it off my knowledge of hockey because I played soccer as a kid. I haven't played soccer since I was in 7th grade. So I haven't played soccer in over 7 years now. So the memory of certain things with soccer definitely gets a little bit fuzzy, but I know the ins and outs of hockey very well. And that's why I can follow soccer so easily, even though I haven't played in so long, because soccer is a sport that it has a lot of similarities to hockey. You know what I mean? And that's also, I for example, like my sister played soccer and she is like, she enjoys soccer. She doesn't really watch a whole lot of other sports, but like she'll watch hockey and like she can follow hockey because she played soccer, and there's a lot of similarities there. So over the Blue Devil Classic, in those 2 games, the Blue Devils actually won both games. They started the season 0-2. They had 2 losses. They were down at Penn State Barron down in Erie, and they had 2 losses. They lost 4-1 to Carnegie Mellon and 3-2 to Baldwin Wallace. And in the Blue Devil Classic, they played Washington and Jefferson, won that one 4-2, and then shut out Utica 2-0. Danny Rubino has been fantastic in goal for the Blue Devils. She's been fantastic for them. And then, of course, last night's 1-1 tie. Blue Devils are back in action. They have one more game this week, actually tomorrow at 4 o'clock. They are at Hilbert, which, again, is up in Hamburg. The men's and women's cross-country teams are not in action this weekend. They were last weekend, however. They headed up to Brockport for a SUNYAC meet. The men's team finishing 3rd out of 6 teams, and then the women's team placing in 6th. Josh Walters, the top finisher for the men's team, and Arden Brown, the top finishers for the women's team. Next time those 2 teams will be in action is not this upcoming Saturday, actually 2 Saturdays from now. So September 30th is the Kara Hall Memorial, and of course Kara Hall was a former runner for the Blue Devils who was tragically killed in a hit-and-run car accident in her hometown a few years back. So this is a huge event. I mean, it's been the last few years, it's kind of been on a much smaller scale, but this year there's going to be a lot of different teams, and I'm very excited for the event. I think that having a cross-country meet at Fredonia, it's going to be so fun, because what I'm excited to see, like, for example, I ran cross-country in high school. I'm very familiar with the sport. My father has coached cross-country for like 16 or 15 years, something like that. So I'm very familiar with the sport. I know the ins and outs. I'm really excited for people who don't quite know the ins and outs of cross-country to get a feel for how a cross-country meet happens. Having a meet at Fredonia, it's going to be wild, because you're going to have students looking around like, wait a minute, I thought that cross-country was like they run laps around the track. Like, why are they like running through the woods and around campus, and what is going on here? But I'm really excited for that. I think it's going to be a fantastic event, and it'll be really good to, honor her memory, of course. And I think that it's really exciting, because as I actually was talking with Josh Walters of the cross-country team. I was talking with their assistant coach, Nick Abdo, as well. And the 2 of them said that this is going to be the biggest meet that the cross-country team has hosted in something like 15 years, maybe more. So definitely, I highly recommend, if anybody is free on September 30th, absolutely come out and check out the cross-country invitational. It's such a unique atmosphere, because cross-country, they always say, is not a spectator sport, which is true. So instead of, you think about, like, if you're going to watch a soccer game or a football game or a basketball game or something like that, you're sitting in the stands, or even in soccer, you're bringing your lawn chair or whatever, and you're sitting and watching the game. That's not the case with cross-country. They run all over the place. So, you're following them. You might be watching them at the start line. Then the gun goes off, and then they take off. And then you're like, all right, where's another spot to go? And it's like, okay, you go down to maybe like the mile mark, or you go down to, like, if there's near a hill, or just the big point for me is, like, wherever you think they're going to need the most encouragement, that's where you got to go. Everybody always kind of flocks to the finish line at the end of the race. Like, it seems like so many people are, like, right there at the start, excited, and then as soon as the gun goes off and they take off, then they just kind of hang out for like 15, 20 minutes, and then they go over to the finish line and cheer them on. It's like, no, like, that's not how I was. I was, like, running back and forth. Like, I'd be running here, running there, running to this corner, running to the mile mark, running to the 2 mile mark, running to the 2.5. And I actually was never usually right at the finish. I was right at the beginning because how it usually is, how cross country meets, at least when I was in high school, how they were set up, is that, you start with kind of a long straightaway, right? And then your twists and turns and everything begin. And then to end the race, it's kind of the same deal. To end the race, you might come around a corner or come around some bend or turn or something like that. And then it's a straight, we call it the chute, right? And then it's just a straight line, straight down, about a, maybe quarter mile, whatever, sprint to the finish. And sprint, I use the word sprint lightly because as my former cross country coach told me, if you can full on sprint at the end of the race, that means that you did not give it enough during the race, right? So basically that last bit is every ounce that you have left. Leave all of it out there. Because after you cross that finish line, you can't go back. You don't want to look back and think, oh, geez, I wish I would have given more. Maybe I could have gotten like top 25, whatever. Because that is like, and these runners know that. That's not an issue for these guys. I'm talking from a former high school runner perspective, but it's going to be really exciting. I'm so excited for it. It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be awesome. In case you can't tell, I get very excited to talk about cross country. I love cross country. It's a sport that does not get enough love, and I love talking about it, especially when people aren't quite familiar with it. I love to be able to bring it up and talk about it and break it down. It's so much fun. I love it. Anyways, on to volleyball. So the women's volleyball team, they did not quite find the same success this past weekend. So they're 1-6, right? And this past weekend, they had 3 games. They actually had 3 down in Erie. They played Penn State Barron last Friday, lost in 3 sets, and then against Grove City on Saturday, and again against Westminster, lost in 3 sets. The thing I always notice with the volleyball team is that even if they lose in 3 sets, it's like 25-22 or like 25-20. Like the first set against Penn State Barron, they lost 25-21. So it's like they're right in it. Like I feel like they lost 3-0. Oh, that's not good. I feel like that's a little misleading because most sets, they're right in it. I mean, they are right there. And then it's just if the ball falls a certain way or if 1 or 2 points go a different way, then things are different and they win. So they've got 3 games coming up this weekend. They are down in Meadville, Pennsylvania for 3. They are at Allegheny College at 7 o'clock on Friday. And then 2 games on Saturday at Hiram and against Wilmington College as well. They are at home next a week from yesterday, so 6 days from now, next Tuesday night for a 6 o'clock tilt with Pitt Bradford. Finally, the women's tennis team, finally, oh my goodness, is it wonderful to say this? The women's tennis team, for the first time since April 25th, 2021, the Fredonia State women's tennis team has won. The drought is over. The Blue Devils have won. They beat Houghton 7-2 on Monday. It's like it reminds me of, for any Bills fans who are old enough to remember this, and I would think that anybody listening, anybody who like watching the Bills or listening to the show probably remembers this. Like for the Bills, remember when I remember from my childhood when the Bills could not beat the Patriots. And I remember they lost, it was 15 straight games. And then they finally beat them. And it was like such a weight lifted off the shoulders. And, Bills fans who are a little bit older than I am may remember in 1980 when the Bills finally beat the Dolphins after losing 20 in a row. And it was just such a weight lifted off the shoulders. Or a couple years ago when the Sabres had lost 18 in a row and finally got back in the win column. No, this is a huge win for the women's tennis program. Congratulations to them. Those young women certainly deserve this. Just awesome, awesome, awesome to be able to get the win, because then it's like the monkey off your back, right? Then it's like you're not thinking about it, and now you can just go out and play. Whereas before that, it's like, oh, God, we haven't won in 2 years. We got to win. Now they can just go out and play. They're 1-3. They actually play later today. They play at Geneseo at 5 o'clock. They are in Grove City at 1. Should be really exciting. So congratulations to the women's tennis team. A lot of good things happening with Fredonia sports right now. That's very encouraging to see. But anyways, right now we are going to take a quick break. And when I come back, I will talk all about the... Do I want to talk about the Bills game? No, but I'm going to. So I'll be talking all about the Bills and Jets game when I come back from break. Oh boy, I should say get ready because yeah, it was not good. Anyways, we're going to take a quick break. Thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports Podcast here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia.
I get lost, running circles in my mind. That's the cost of living the dream as you and I. And all our friends are growing up, some are going gray. But look at us, we haven't aged a day. I got you to take this journey on with me. There's nothing else that I could ever need. We got enough gas to keep this tin can on the road. Just enough cash, let the bills pile up at home. And all our friends are busy saving up for rainy days. Have this any other way. Hope, I got hope that you will always be there at the end of my rope. As long as I got you to take this journey on with me, there's nothing else that I could ever need. I got hope. You will always be there at the end of my road. As long as I got you to take this journey on with me, there's nothing else that I could hope. I got hope that you will always be there at the end of my road. As long as I got you to take this journey on with me, there's nothing else that I could ever need. There's nothing else that I could ever need.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. At the tone, please record your message.
Hey, I'm just calling to let you know that you're listening to WCVF 88.9 The Voice.
Welcome back to Big Blue Sports Podcast. So I mentioned before I left, do I really want to talk about the Bills? And yes, I have to. Boy, was Monday night rough. There's a lot of things that were going through my mind over the course of that game. And now that I've had a day and a half to clear my head and arrange my thoughts, I'd like to talk about what in the wide world we watched on Monday night. I mean, to sum it all up in one sentence, that was pathetic. I mean, that was a joke. You go out there week one and fall flat on your face like Buffalo did. That's ridiculous. I mean, it was actually embarrassing to watch. For anybody who watched the game, So a full-on breakdown. I will preface this, and I don't want to get too loud here. I will preface this by highlighting a few players who I thought actually played well. And this won't take long because there weren't many. First of all, Stefon Diggs was fantastic. Diggs was open almost all night long. He was great and instrumental on that final Buffalo, or well, not the final Buffalo drive, but the drive that came down and tied the game at the end of regulation. Matt Milano was the star defensively. Milano, as seemingly always, Milano doesn't miss tackles. He's right on the ball. He's always in the right spot. Milano was terrific. I thought that Christian Benford played a decent game. I didn't have an issue with Benford at all. I thought that James Cook did the best he could with the circumstances around him offensively, and those circumstances were, most of the rest of his team played like flaming hot garbage. There were a couple other players that I thought were decent. I thought Buffalo's defensive ends played well. I thought Leonard Floyd and Greg Rousseau had nice games. Boy, I'm really racking my brain to try and find some Bills that actually played well because, again, the list is sparing. O'Cyrus Torrence in his first NFL game, I thought he did fine. I thought he was Buffalo's best offensive lineman, which Pro Football Focus agrees with. I didn't have an issue with O'Cyrus Torrence in the game at all. I thought he was fine. Who else? I'm really trying to rack my brain because, again, the list of players who actually played well Monday night is incredibly short compared to the 53-man roster because most of them played like garbage. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got right now for players. Latavius Murray had a couple of carries. Wasn't really a huge factor in the game. When he was in, he was fine. That's probably about it. When I talk about a game, and out of 53 players on the roster, I can only name like 6 players who actually played well. That's embarrassing. I mean, that is embarrassing. Actually, I should mention Terrell Bernard for making his first NFL start, not bad. Could have been better, could have been a lot worse. Some of his teammates were a lot worse. So I always feel like a lot of pressure. I'll start with the good. I'll start with the good because there's a lot less of it than the overwhelmingly what's that book called? Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. Monday night was Josh Allen and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad game. So I thought that defensively, in the first half, Buffalo's pass rush was excellent. I thought they did a really good job of, they got to Rodgers on the first drive, then Rodgers got hurt, which I'll get to later. And, I thought Greg Rousseau, I thought some of those guys got some good pressure. And even with Zach Wilson in the game, the pass rush wasn't as prevalent in the second half. Defensively, overall, against the pass, Buffalo's defense did a nice job. I mean, they did well against the pass. We'll get to the run defense in a second because I got a few things to say about that. Offensively, let's see. What did the Bills do well? I'm thinking. Yeah, I got nothing. So now let's get to the bad. And I hope you have time because there's an awful lot of it. So get comfortable. I feel like a lot of unnecessary criticism falls on the quarterback sometimes. But any criticism towards Josh Allen on Monday night, 100% warranted. I'm just going to flat out say it. Josh Allen was awful. He was terrible on Monday night. That's one of the worst games I've ever seen him play. I mean, Josh Allen actually looked worse than he did some of the games his rookie year on Monday night. He was terrible. His decision-making, awful. You've got guys open underneath for like 3 or 4 or 5 yards when you only need 6 or 7. Why are you rolling to the right, putting more pressure on your offensive line, and throwing the ball 60 yards downfield in a double coverage? It's ridiculous. Whether it's Allen, whether it's Dorsey, I don't care. It's mindless. And I don't understand why we continue to do this. It's the same thing that we dealt with last year and the year before that. I don't understand why the Bills are allowed to make the same mistakes that they make every single year, and they never learn from it. Every single time, it's Josh Allen sitting, yeah, I I was terrible tonight. I cost our team the game. I wasn't good. Yep. You're spot on. So what are you going to do to fix it? It reminded me of, remember last year when Jerry Sullivan, who, I don't even want to get into it about Jerry Sullivan. That's a whole nother topic. But when Jerry Sullivan made that smart comment about, this doesn't look like an offense that's good enough to win the Super Bowl. First of all, is that even a question? That's, lame excuse for a reporter, but that's beside the point. And then I just remember he was like, this isn't an offense. It looks good enough to win the Super Bowl. Josh Allen just looks at him and says, okay. That's how I felt watching Josh Allen's press conference on Monday night when Josh was saying, yeah, I was terrible. I cost the team the game. It's tough when you feel like you're the reason you lost. I'm literally sitting there going, okay. Yep, you're right. You're exactly 100% right. So what are we going to do to fix this? Because let me tell you, it's not the first time this has happened. And listen, if it was like one or two plays where Josh Allen just made a bad decision, those are a couple plays, you can move on past it. It is what it is. It was almost the whole game. All game long. I saw a play that Josh drops back and immediately tries to run for the first down. First of all, it was like 3rd and 9. There were defenders closing. It's 3rd and 9. Tries to run for a first down. Mistake number 1. Stefon Diggs is wide open underneath. So why is his first instinct to take it up the middle and try and run for it? Because he was just trying to play hero ball. Why? I don't know if that's Allen. I don't know if that's Dorsey. Maybe it's both. But I don't, for the life of me, understand why all night on Monday night, Josh Allen, with guys wide open underneath, is making the mind-numbing decision to scramble for his life outside the pocket and just fire the ball 60 yards downfield into double coverage and pray that somebody in a blue jersey catches it. Guess what? They didn't. Jordan Whitehead, a safety for the Jets, was Josh Allen's favorite receiver Monday night. He had 3 interceptions. Oh, not to mention Josh Allen also lost a fumble at the end of the game. Yeah. Every single one of those turnovers was Allen's fault. He has to play better. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Josh Allen's terrible. He's the worst. He's not. Josh Allen's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. The team will live and die by him. Allen is a great quarterback. He's still my quarterback. I still love Josh Allen. But I think it's completely fair to criticize the heck out of him for Monday night because he was awful. He was terrible. I will say this, though. He was not the only one. It was not just Josh Allen. Football is a team game. One player, and I've said this before. I've said this with the Sabres last year. One player does not win you a game, and one player does not lose you a game. Football is a team sport. You either win as a team or you lose as a team. And on Monday night, the Buffalo Bills lost as a team. Embarrassingly lost as a team. There were lots of other players that did not play well. The offensive line, Osiris Torrance I thought was decent. That's about it for the O-line. Spencer Brown, what do you know? Spencer Brown had yet another terrible game where he's getting beat on every single play pretty much. Who could have seen that coming? Interesting. And yet Brandon Beane chose not to put any pressure on him in camp. Didn't bring in any competition for the right tackle spot. Just said, here you go, Spencer. It's yours. No competition. No pressure at all. Yeah, that's going to help guys get better. Deion Dawkins. Where is the Deion Dawkins of the past? Deion Dawkins is a good offensive lineman. He was terrible last year, all year. Guess what? He was terrible again last night. Not last night, Monday night. The tackles are spots that every Bills fan was nervous about because they didn't feel like the front office did enough to improve. Well, at least for Monday night, I think all of us were proved correct because the tackles were awful. Dawkins and Brown had terrible games. Terrible. Start to finish. I didn't see one good block out of either one of them. Terrible. It's not acceptable. Not at all acceptable. Well, okay, let me rephrase this. It shouldn't be acceptable, but will McDermott let it slide? We'll see. Instead of sitting up there saying, yeah, we really beat ourselves. We beat ourselves and we got to play better. Our culture's really good. I don't care about your culture right now. I care about you actually working hard enough to win football games. That's what I care about. That's wonderful. You've got everybody all happy in the locker room, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. People are comparing Sean McDermott to Marty Schottenheimer, and I don't know as if I really want to go that far yet because Sean McDermott has won playoff games. Marty Schottenheimer never really could. I don't know if that's the most fair comparison, but right now, yeah, the fans who are saying that, they have a solid point. I mean, the logic is there. We can't keep doing this. Like, it's the same thing. It's the same mistakes that just never get fixed. It's the offensive line is terrible, doesn't know how to block. Josh Allen trying to play hero ball. Part of that, whether it's the scheme from Ken Dorsey makes no sense, whether it's Allen trying to play hero ball because the rest of his teammates are playing like garbage, whether it's just Allen thinking that he needs to play hero ball and thinking that his talent will bail him out. I don't know what it is, but it's got to stop. And it's happened way too many times. And of course, as I'm saying that, Siri goes off on my watch. Siri's listening into Big Blue Sports Podcast. But like, it's just, I don't understand how we continue to make the same mistakes and they don't get fixed. Like, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I understand. With Josh Allen, you take the good with the bad. Sometimes he's going to have rough games. But Monday night was rough to a level that it can't happen again. There's rough games, and then there's games where you genuinely do not use your head. And Josh Allen did not use his head on Monday night. It wasn't even just the interceptions. It wasn't even just the fumble. It was the fact that he missed a couple of receivers. It was the fact that instead of just running out of bounds or sliding after getting what he needs, no, he tries to fight for extra yards. And yeah, so you're taking all of that unnecessary contact for what? 2 extra yards, maybe 3? Why? They had a shot of Sean McDermott on the sideline, pointing to his head saying, be smart, be smart. And the drive after that, Josh Allen, instead of running out of bounds, tries to plow forward and creates all sorts of unnecessary contact. He's going to get himself hurt if he doesn't learn to use his head. That's just flat out honest. I mean, sounds pretty self-explanatory, but you got to use your head if you're an NFL quarterback. Josh Allen didn't Monday night. That's a big part of the reason why they lost. But again, not the only reason, because almost every player on that team should take credit for this loss. That was brutal. That was ridiculous. For a team that is talented enough, I think, to win it all, that's a pathetic showing, and it had better not happen again. I was talking to a friend of mine after the game on Monday night, and I said all 53 of those guys had better be absolutely perfect in every aspect of the game the next 2 weeks, because they've got 2 very winnable games coming up against the Raiders on Sunday and against Washington the week after. Those are 2 winnable games. They had better come out and show up and play well, because what we saw from them on Monday night was inexcusable. It was ridiculous. They just gave everybody who was counting them out in the offseason so much more fuel to say that they're not that good. Listen, I don't think, and as I thought about this, yes, it was brutal. It was terrible. The Cincinnati Bengals also lost and honestly looked worse than the Bills did. The Kansas City Chiefs lost on Thursday night. Did not look that great. Some good, the Eagles won, but the Eagles really didn't look great against New England either. I mean, some of your title contenders really didn't look good in week 1. So my hope is that this was just rust, that it's not a true indication of what they are as a team. I don't think it is. I think they'll rebound. Ultimately, I think they'll be fine. But we can't have another showing like Monday night. That was ridiculous. That can't ever happen again. I run out of things to say. I actually run out of things to say because of how embarrassing that was. Oh, another thing, the run defense, terrible, awful. Still can't stop the run. Nice to know that problem wasn't fixed. Couldn't stop it all last year. Couldn't stop it Monday night either. Jets ran all over them. Just like how a lot of teams ran all over them last year. For a defensive-minded coach who's taken over as a defensive play caller, yeah, that looks good. That your defense can't stop any running back at all in the league. Everybody's going to run for 120 yards on you if you don't get something figured out. It's ridiculous. Fix it. Simple as that. You know, it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen. But anyways, before I get too ahead of myself, I got to take another break. And then later on in the show, I'm going to make my picks for who I think is going to win in week 2. Not trying to overreact to week 1. Hopefully I don't, but we'll certainly see what happens. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and thanks for hearing me out on my Bills rant. Anybody who listened last year heard me rant about the Sabres plenty of times, but this was one of my first. No, I kind of had a blow up over the Minnesota game last year too, I think. But then again, they had a lot of injuries that game, so that, you know, that is what it is, and it was just a great game overall. But anyways, thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports Podcast on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. I'll be right back.
Catch me on the Golden Coast, I'm long due headed down. Left my family waving slow back when the time ran out. Took Dad's Camry, drove it dry and let those tears run clean. All the sadness from my eyes, from everything I'd seen. All this sadness, all life's lessons, these confessional songs we sing, lead me higher to salvation, tears to all the future. Woe and trouble, take the highways, byways, shake my blues. Well, my heart up with affection each time that I get loose. From all my sadness, all life's lessons, these confessional songs we sing, lead me higher to salvation, tears to all the future. These past years have been cloaked in silence, sprung from deeper wells of sorrow. Here I'm standing, feeling gracious, pain today is gone. Tomorrow, homesick, vagrant, damp and cold, no love could set me free. Fragrant as an LA rose, she drew something out of me. All my sadness, all life's lessons, these confessional songs I sing, lead me higher. I've been patient, here's to all the future.
Feels like gravity is getting stronger. Something's pushing down on my shoulders, trying to flatten me out, leave me on the ground. Dreamt of standing in line last night, just queuing up in an unending line. Woke up feeling I'm still waiting for what I don't know, but the feeling grows. My feet are stuck in the thickest mud, trying to pull myself free from it, starting to feel that's a Sisyphean task.
Tune in to News at Noon on Mondays and Wednesdays at noon, with an additional news segment on High Noon Friday, every Friday at noon. News at Noon gives you your local, campus, and international updates, as well as sports and weather. Be sure to tune in.
And you can catch News at Noon today at noon, of course, every Monday and Wednesday. Also today, for Constitution Day, Professor Wilson Hund will be presenting the Constitution Day keynote address called Liberty and Equality, an analysis of the rights to abortion and same-sex marriage under the Constitution. Professor Hund will describe the history of the rights to liberty and equality under the Constitution, including Abraham Lincoln's influence on said rights. He also will discuss the legal arguments lawyers and judges use to interpret these rights, as well as the consequences these laws can have on women and the LGBTQ community. This event is sponsored by ADP with support from the Carnahan-Jackson Humanities Fund of the Fredonia College Foundation. This event will occur today from 2 to 2:50 in the Williams Center, room 204. So make sure to check out the Constitution Day keynote address. Before I get to the weekly NFL picks, I want to recap the baseball games that we've seen. There was some weather and some postponements, so a lot of games happening last night. A doubleheader in Boston between the Yankees and the Red Sox. Yankees taking both games of the doubleheader, 3-2 in the first game, 4-1 in the second. The Chicago White Sox take down the Kansas City Royals in the Battle of the Bottom Feeders. I say that as a Cardinals fan, of course. The White Sox beating the Royals 6-2. Royals, one of the first teams, I believe, to 100 losses. Actually, I think they were the first. Yeah, they were. They actually played a doubleheader, so that was the second game. First one, the Royals won, though, 11-10. In the other games, the Pittsburgh Pirates beating the Washington Nationals 5-1. The St. Louis Cardinals getting a 5-2 win over the Baltimore Orioles. Cardinals pitcher Adam Wainwright with his 199th career win. His record improves to 4-11. I'm a Cardinals fan. Please don't ask how I'm doing. It's been terrible. The Cincinnati Reds beating the Detroit Tigers 6-5 in 10 innings. Another extra inning game in Philadelphia as the Braves beat the Phillies 7-6. The Rangers go up north to Toronto and beat the Blue Jays 6-3. The Mets over the Diamondbacks 7-4. The Twins beating the Rays 3-2. Brewers over the Marlins 3-1. The A's go into Houston and beat the Astros 6-2. The Rockies beating the Cubs 6-4. Mariners shutting out the Angels 8-0. The Guardians over the Giants 3-1, and the Dodgers hammer the Padres 11-2. Few games going on today. First game getting started at 1:10 this afternoon. The Rays going to Minnesota to take on the Twins. 3:10 this afternoon, the Colorado Rockies hosting the Chicago Cubs. 3:45, the San Francisco Giants hosting the Cleveland Guardians. At 4:10, the Seattle Mariners hosting the Los Angeles Angels. Couple games starting at 6:35, the Pittsburgh Pirates hosting the Washington Nationals and the Baltimore Orioles hosting the St. Louis Cardinals. 6:40 tonight, the Detroit Tigers hosting the Cincinnati Reds and the Philadelphia Phillies host the Atlanta Braves. 7:07 tonight, the Toronto Blue Jays playing host to the Texas Rangers. Couple games getting started at 7:10. The New York Mets hosting the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Houston Astros at home against the Oakland A's, and the Boston Red Sox playing host to the New York Yankees. Then two games getting started at 7:40. The Chicago White Sox at home against the Kansas City Royals, the Milwaukee Brewers at home against the Miami Marlins, and at 10:10 tonight, the Los Angeles Dodgers playing host to the San Diego Padres. And we'll take a look at the Major League Baseball standings. The Baltimore Orioles still holding a 3-game lead in the AL East. They sit at 91-53. Tampa Bay Rays sitting 3 games back at 89-57. The Toronto Blue Jays sitting at third place, 80-65. The Boston Red Sox and New York Yankees sitting at 73-72, and they have been eliminated from AL East division contention. So the AL East is now down to the Orioles, Rays, and Blue Jays. In the AL Central, the Minnesota Twins still holding the lead, 76-69. The Cleveland Guardians, 69-77, 7.5 games back. Twins are the only team with a winning record in the AL Central. The Detroit Tigers in third place at 66-78. The Chicago White Sox, 56-89, and the Kansas City Royals, 45 wins, 101 losses. Both the White Sox and Royals eliminated from division contention. AL Central is down to Minnesota, Cleveland, or Detroit. Finally, in the AL West, the Houston Astros still holding a 1-game lead over the Texas Rangers. They sit at 82-64. Rangers sitting at 80-64. Mariners 80-65. That should be a good battle between those three teams. Los Angeles Angels at 68-78, and the Oakland A's 46-99. A's eliminated from division contention, and the A's are somehow not the worst team in all of baseball right now. In the National League East, the Atlanta Braves, the first team to clinch a playoff spot in 2023. They lead the division at 95-50, and their magic number for an NL East title is down to just 2. The Philadelphia, I almost said the Eagles, jeez. The Philadelphia Phillies sit 16 games back. They're 79-66. Miami Marlins 74-71. New York Mets 66-78, and the Washington Nationals 65-80. NL East is down to just Atlanta and Philadelphia. Braves' magic number for a division title is down to 2. The NL Central, the only division in baseball where all 5 teams still have a mathematic shot at winning the division. The Milwaukee Brewers currently lead the NL Central at 81-63. Chicago Cubs at 78-68, 4 games back. Cincinnati Reds at 75-71. Then the Pittsburgh Pirates at 67-78, and the St. Louis Cardinals at 64-81. Somehow, at 64-81, the Cardinals still have a mathematic chance to win the National League Central. However, one more loss, and they are done. So tonight, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. In the NL West, the LA Dodgers leading the division at 88-56. Arizona Diamondbacks 13 games back at 76-70. San Francisco Giants sit third at 74-71. San Diego Padres at 68-78, and the Colorado Rockies at 52-92. Rockies and Padres cannot win the NL West. It's down to LA, Arizona, or San Francisco. So it should be interesting to see how all that plays out. Oh, the wild card right now, of course, in the AL. Right now, the division leaders, Baltimore in the East, Houston in the West, Minnesota in the Central. As of right now, Tampa Bay and Texas hold down the top 2 wildcard spots. Seattle and Toronto are tied for the 3rd wildcard spot. The Red Sox and the Yankees both sit 7 games back as the first teams out. In the National League, the Braves leading the East, Dodgers in the West, Brewers in the Central. Right now, the wild card spots held down by the Phillies, Cubs, and Diamondbacks, and the Reds sit just 1 game back of Arizona. So that's a look at what's going on in the MLB. Again, just a couple weeks left in the season. Now, for the final few minutes of the show, I want to go through and make my picks for who I think is going to win this season, or win this week, rather, not this season. So the Thursday night game tomorrow night, the Philadelphia Eagles heading to Minnesota this is weird. This is listed so bizarrely right now. I have it up and it has the favorite listed first, but it's really weird. So Thursday night, the Minnesota Vikings heading to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. This is going to be a really good game. I'm going to go with the favorite. I'm going to take the Eagles to win that one. Then we get into the Sunday games. The Green Bay Packers heading to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. Packers looked really good last week. Falcons were able to get the win as well. Battle of two 1-0 teams. I'll take Green Bay to go 2-0. The Raiders coming to Buffalo to take on the Bills. This is very much a get-right game for the Bills, or at least it should be, and I think they do. I think Buffalo picks up the win. Ravens heading to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. The Ravens were able to get a win over the Texans last week, where the Bengals looked rough in a loss to the Browns. I think Cincinnati gets back on track, and the Bengals win this game. Seattle Seahawks heading up to Detroit to take on the Lions. This should be a really exciting game. Again, I'm going to go with the favorite. I'm being lame. I'm going to take the Lions. The LA Chargers heading into Tennessee to take on the Titans. The Chargers' offense looks really good. Their defense, not so much. Fortunately for them, they're playing Tennessee, who struggled a little bit. Offense, really, I don't think is going to be able to keep up with that of the Chargers. I'll take the Chargers to win that one. The Bears heading down to Tampa Bay to take on the Bucs. This should be a very interesting game. I'm going to go with the Bucs to win it. They looked decent last week. The Kansas City Chiefs heading into Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. Do I do it? Should I do it? You know what? Bold call. Jacksonville wins. The Chiefs start 0-2. I can hear the NFL media screaming at me right now saying, how dare you pick against Mahomes and the Chiefs? You know what? I'm doing it. I don't know if Travis Kelce's going to be healthy or not. We know they re-signed Chris Jones. I don't know if Kelce's going to be healthy or not. Jacksonville looks legit. If Kelce's not ready to go, I think Jacksonville wins this game. The Colts heading down to Houston to take on the Texans. Honestly, Anthony Richardson didn't play too bad. The Colts defense, man, I don't know, but they played fired up last week. I think the Colts go down to Houston and they get the win. The 49ers heading to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. The 49ers looked unbelievable last week. This is into the 4 o'clock games now. The 49ers looked unreal in Pittsburgh last week. I got to pick the 49ers to win this game. The Giants heading to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. The Cardinals might be the worst team in the league this year. The Giants were awful last week. I don't think that's a true indication of how they are as a team. The Giants get the win. The Jets heading down to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. If Rodgers was healthy, I'd be picking the Jets. He's not. Cowboys win. Washington heading out to Denver. This is an interesting game. Denver is listed as the favorite. I don't know that I agree with that. They lost by 1. I'm going to pick Sam Howell and the Commanders to go into Denver and get the win next week. Then we get into the Sunday night game. We got a Monday night doubleheader this week? Really? Huh. The Sunday night game, the Dolphins heading to New England to take on the Patriots. I think Miami wins this game. Miami looked good last week. I think the Dolphins take it. The first Monday night game, it was the same as it was last year. Remember that with the Bills-Vikings and the Bills-Titans and Vikings-Eagles. So the first game, the Saints heading to Carolina to take on the Panthers. Bryce Young's first home game of his NFL career. This is interesting because honestly, I could see this going either way. You know what? Why not? I'm going to pick Carolina to win. Why not? I think Carolina's going to win. And then the other game, the Browns heading to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Steelers looked really bad last week. I think they're better than that. The Browns looked really good last week. I don't know that they're quite that good. So this is going to be an interesting game. The Browns' defense is legit. Pittsburgh's defense is really good, but they got cooked last week. So it's going to be, I don't know, that's going to be a good game. I feel like that's going to be exciting. It's going to be a defensive battle. And you know what? Because we've seen it so many times with the poor Browns, I'm going to pick the Steelers. I'm sorry. It seems like a game that the Browns should win, but the Steelers are going to somehow figure out how to win. I don't know. It gives me the vibes of that kind of a game that Pittsburgh just somehow pulls out, even though the Browns arguably play better. So that's my prediction. So my predictions for the week, I think the Vikings beat the Eagles on Thursday night. Sunday 1 o'clock games, Green Bay over Atlanta, Buffalo over the Raiders, Cincinnati over Baltimore, Detroit over Seattle, the Chargers over Tennessee, Tampa Bay over Chicago, Jacksonville over Kansas City, and Indianapolis over Houston. In the 4 o'clock games, San Francisco over the Rams, the Giants over Arizona, Dallas over the Jets, Washington over Denver. In the Sunday night game, Miami beating New England. And the 2 Monday night games, Carolina over New Orleans and Pittsburgh over Cleveland. That's my picks. Again, realistically, I'll probably be wrong, but we never know. That's just my personal opinion for what I think is going to happen this week in the NFL, and it should be an exciting week. And for Bills fans, it's certainly a get-right game, so I would definitely keep an eye on that Bills versus Raiders game. Well, that'll do it for another episode of Big Blue Sports Podcast. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, whether you're driving around Dunkirk or Fredonia or listening on FredoniaRadio.com. I also want to thank everybody at Fredonia Radio Systems and WCVF who makes this show possible. We'll see you next week, hopefully recapping a Bills win over the Raiders, but the jury remains out on that. We'll see what happens. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next week. Have a good one.
Broadcasting live out of the Fredonia Radio Studios, we are 88.9 WCVF, the voice of Fredonia.
You're listening to WCVF-FM 88.9 The Voice, streaming worldwide on FredoniaRadio.com and on Live 365.
Shake me, bend me and just take me.